I have the
This is the Left in the Forgotten Broke podcast. I'm Andrew Savage,
I'm Nancy Richards, and we
and
have a lot to chat. We always have a lot to chat about.
always it's post-primary day here in New York, and it was a big one. It was a big one for Staten Island and for the rest of New York City.
And now that the primary's over, guess what I did all day today?
What did you do?
I paper shredded all of the flyers I got from Jessica, the two
Yeah.
a day. So I
Well,
was like,
there's
okay, I can get rid of all of my election stuff now.
there's more. I'm sure there's more to come for November, but it was interesting. We had a couple of primaries here on Staten Island. We've been talking about the Congressional District 11 primary here ad nauseum. That's been kind of a crazy up and down situation. Mike Decillis won that primary, the ghost primary, with 61% of the vote. Interestingly enough, Allison Ziogas, who's not been in the race for months, has won 37% of
Yeah,
the
I
vote.
know where that. It just okay.
And so
And
so there's that. And uh, we had the controller's primary. There were three major candidates. Tom DiNapoli, the incumbent, won. And then on a more local level, we had the state senate primary between state senator Jessica Scarcella Spanton and her opponent Omar Mohammed. She won with 73% of the vote. Um, and he got, I think, maybe 26, maybe seven, I don't know.
mm,
Something like that.
I
And
got one flyer from him.
yeah.
But I got like two a day from her. Do you think do you think that gave her the 73%? Because all the flyers? Like
Well,
do you believe, I don't know, do you think flyers help?
Well, money, I think when you have the kind of money where you can do lit drops and where you could do lawn signs where people see your name, they see your face everywhere, that definitely helps.
Yeah, I guess
And
so.
yeah,
I wish we would have had that type of literature for Mike Decillis, uh, or actually having somebody on the primary that wasn't even running. So, but we didn't, which is also, very interesting for me in regards to the Democratic Party and how they support their candidates. But Mike's now winning, and he's going to be the Democratic candidate. And I hope the leadership on Staten Island gets behind him because the most important thing is we have to defeat Nicole Malliotakis. And speaking with Mike on this show and in person, um, he knows how to answer a question. He has a plan. He has ideas. And I think he can go after her on some of the bullshit that she spouses as opposed to just giving these vague, not addressing issues. And I really wish the Democratic Party would really get behind him because I think he would be a good congressman.
yeah, well, and now that the strange ghost primary is over, I think the opportunity exists for a meeting of the minds, and I hope that that happens. Usually around the transition between a primary and the general, I would say, maybe end of July, beginning of August. There's usually a big rally with all of the candidates at county headquarters. If you know where that is, that's here on Forest Avenue, and there's this like little yard that they have, or this little alley that they have, where they set up a stage and everybody goes up and makes their speech, and it's kind of a kickoff. People go and do lit drops, and they do all kinds of stuff for each candidate. I went last night to Jessica Scarcella Spanton's election night party. And it was really interesting. I had seen some people who I haven't seen for a time, and of course, we celebrated Jessica's victory. And
Which was
she,
at Jody's. Yeah.
it was absolutely at Jody's. Part of the reason I wanted to go to that one, I'm right here. I could walk it to and fro.
Yeah,
Um,
you're lucky like that. You live.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't go anywhere because I can't, I could walk to Home Depot, but um I
I was gonna text you. It was a little late, but I was gonna say she had an open bar, so you could have come.
oh yeah, I had 10 bucks in my pocket. That's all I had. So I was just like, um it's funny because I say this all the time, but and I'm getting used to it. ever since now I'm on a fixed income, the last week of the month, I'm broke. Like
Yeah.
broke. Like I know what it means to get your check now because you know, like tomorrow, like the bank, I could see it in the bank, like it'll be here, but not today. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, it was, just sort of getting back to the party last night. It was a really, really good party. It was a really good celebration. I was there for when Jessica gave her victory speech, and she was really gracious towards her primary opponent, towards Omar Mohammed. And she actually told me last week that she does, she wants to meet with him and his supporters at some point just to kind of, consolidate the base and to know that whether you voted for her or not, she's going to be your state senator too. And I think that's the way to do it. I think that's the way to bring people together. Um, and it was interesting because we had, uh, I was saying before we started recording, we had people from all parts of the party there supporting uh, Jessica. We had people from the Mamdani wing were there supporting Jessica. We had people from the unions. We had people from county. I saw some of my old friends from when we were all young Dems. We're still Dems, but we're not young anymore. Um, and it was a really fun, fantastic night. I stayed out much later than I normally do on a weeknight. I stayed out until midnight, and
oh, okay.
the only reason I could do that because I'm right here. But like it was I felt like death all day today. I was like, oh God.
You had a grade.
I did
Ugh.
great. I did
Ugh.
great. Yeah, I did great, and I was doing that, and I was like, oh God, I had one too many. Let's not even.
Fun.
It's 12. And that was late for me to stay out till midnight. But it was a really, it was a fun party. I'm happy she won her primary. It's well deserved. Um, I think the way that she's done it has been a very successful formula of just bringing people in from all different parts of the party. She's also just, second to none as far as constituent services go. And she is, really just somebody who, as she said last night, her two big priorities, and I think this should be all priorities for all Democrats, is one, that they could afford where they live, but two, that they feel safe where they live. And that's really, I think, what should be top of mind
Well,
for
say that on Forest Avenue is
all Democrats. And so,
Forest Avenue is expensive. I grew up in West Brighton. I can't afford to live there. So, well, at least buy a house. I mean, maybe I should have bought a condo where you are. I could have walked to Jody's. But
yeah,
um
it was a fun time, and you know, I we were looking at races from across the city. I had when we were there, I had my Board of Elections app open to check on the different ones that were coming in, the unofficial results, because those are much quicker than actually waiting for the news to call.
yeah,
Uh,
I was looking at the bottom of the screen. I know you said you had your app.
Yeah, it was the Board of Elections because if you go on the Board of Elections site at the top, there's a hyperlink and it says unofficial election results. You click on it, it goes to all the different races that are happening. It was interesting. I didn't see, not that the Republican Party is any, it's more or less invisible outside of Staten Island and South Brooklyn and parts of Queens, but I didn't see any Republican primaries. It was all,
I didn't hear them talk about any. I watched New York One for a while. No, I didn't see anything for Republicans. So, yeah, like there were no there were no primaries I know of on Staten Island. So,
no,
um, and yeah, no, I'm trying to think. No, didn't see anything. So, um, I and they yeah, I'm just like running through like looking at all the people that they went through all the boroughs and everything was a Democrat.
yeah,
So, all right, well, probably a lot of people aren't running unopposed. I mean, the way that they were talking last night, it's like, well, they won the primary, they're going to win the election. So,
Pretty much. I remember Justin Brannon when he was on this podcast last year. He was funny. He said, Staten Island and South Brooklyn Democrats are a rare breed in that, they have actual competitive general elections. For the most part, he said Democrats around the city just kind of go to sleep after their primary. He was like, yeah, they just more or less go to sleep. And he said we Staten Island and South Brooklyn Democrats are used to a kind of campaign warfare that, Democrats around the city just don't experience in a general election.
Well, um, but no, I'm sorry. There's shit noise going on outside, so I'm like, is there something going on? But no. Um, I was wondering, with the party last night, is it normal for all right, dogs are gonna bark. It's very loud kids walking past my house. Um, is it normal for the candidates to have separate parties? I know like in the general election people get together at the Staten, the Democratic Party, but the fact that Mike had a party down the street and the Jessica had a party up at Jody's and a lot of the Democratic leaders were up at Jody's. Um, is that normal?
Well, nothing is normal in this election cycle, at least on
Yes.
Staten Island. Nothing is normal in this election cycle. Well, in the general election, everybody is all kind of in one spot. Primaries can be tricky because, they're kind of they divide, the party's voters. And so usually in a primary, the party's voters will go with their candidate of choice wherever they are. And I know
Sorry.
Jessica had one, Mike had a party, and then Omar had a party. Jessica's opponent, he had a party somewhere on Bay Street. And
Yeah, in
so,
Stapleton.
yeah. And so, people, I guess in the primary, people are more likely just to, party with their chosen candidate. Um, and, you know, I went to Jessica's because I'm right here, essentially. And so that was interesting. It was a lot of fun, but again, I'm sort of, I can't do this whole let's stay out until 12 a.m. thing on a weeknight anymore.
No, yeah, no. No longer school night. So, but I would have liked to have come out, but it was I don't know. I didn't know what kind of fee or how much it would cost. So I just
Oh, that was yeah, it was okay. It was nothing, but it was fun, and I was really happy. And one of the things I was happy about, as I was telling you before we started recording, was I was sitting at the bar initially when people started to come in, and they were like, "Oh, we listen. We're regular listeners. We've seen what we've all been saying about the congressional race and about this or that." And I'm happy that we're getting that kind of recognition. I'm happy that people are listening to what we have to say and that we're shaping the discourse.
yeah, I mean I got a nice text from Pam Silvestri. She had said that she listened to our podcast on about Mike, and she said it really helped clarify a lot. So I'm glad. And I'm thinking about that because when I look at the percentage of people that voted for Allison in this election, um, I'm wondering, is in regards to his message on, you know, who that like don't vote for that person's not running.
Right.
And then I also wondering if it was a protest vote from some of the leadership that hasn't really been very supportive of his campaign so far. So I don't know.
Potentially,
Yeah.
potentially,
I mean,
yeah.
people can vote for whoever they want. That's what an election's for. So but I was curious as to like that percentage of people that voted for Allison and she wasn't even running.
Yeah.
Um, so we need, all right, so the primary is over,
Mhm.
and now we need to come together and we need to flip the seat. I, you know, I really believe that if you look at what's been happening the last year with Nicole Malliotakis, every Monday there is a group of people outside her. a lot of it is done on, the Action Coalition, but there's other people there, and they're addressing issues that she's not addressing her constituents. And but there's a lot of pressure put on her. And when Mike was saying in regards to the fact that it's interesting that Allison's name was still on the ballot, and then her lawyers, also sued to in regards to the ballot, um, because I think she feels that she might not have an easy time in this election. It's not going to be, um, so I feel there's this opportunity that
Oh,
we.
there is. Absolutely is, and I think that we definitely have to seize on it. We definitely have to uh, we definitely have to take her to task. It was interesting actually for the Staten Island Action Coalition. I meant to bring this up last week, but I forgot. There was an event on the same night as that ridiculous, homoerotic UFC fight. That basically it was in celebration of the First Amendment. It was a concert that was hosted by Jane Fonda and Joy Reid. And
Mhm.
I went to a local venue here with the Staten Island Action Coalition, and we watched it, and we did some trivia. It was fun. It was, and the space was filled to the rafters of people who were looking for community, looking for like-minded people who wanted to speak up and stand up against the abuses and the human rights violations and the bulldozing of democracy that this administration has engaged in and that Nicole Malliotakis has enabled and encouraged in a lot of ways. And so that was a really fun event, but it was also an event that showed the power of the grassroots organizing. And I'm hoping that we could take that with us all the way into November. Like I said, I'm really happy that this podcast is part of the discourse, because at that event as well, people were commenting on just our commentary, especially on this primary in CD11. And so I'm happy that we can be part of the discourse. And, I'm for all of it. I'm for, the people who agree with us, maybe don't. We got our first MAGA comment troll on one of our YouTube videos, which I loved.
Oh, tell me about it.
Mhm. It was, I don't remember. It was one of the ones where we were together in person at your house, and um, something rung behind you and you had to get up and get it. And he was like, "Oh, that's the bell for your Trump derangement syndrome." And I was like, and I commented and I said, "Well, thank you for listening. We're happy even for the hate watch. We're, I would love to be hate watched. It's amazing."
My Trump, yeah, my belt. I love that Trump derangement syndrome. Like, people really think that's a real thing. Like, I just don't like the president because he does some really fucked up shit. I don't, that's a derangement. I mean,
Well,
so
we're not supposed to react with anger or sadness or some sense of you know, mourning for our country when a lecherous embodiment of the seven deadly sins gets rolled up and put into the most powerful office in the land.
yeah, no, exactly. So, if that's a syndrome, fine. I'll take it.
Listen, symptoms may include empathy, respect for democracy, uh, love of country, respect for your fellow man, welcoming of the stranger. Those are the things you have to look out for with Trump
Yeah,
derangement syndrome.
that's true. Well, TDS.
Hmm.
I have TDS. It sounds like a rash. So,
Oh, it does, but it might as well be. It just keeps coming back. Like, I don't. What's the cream for it? Where's their cream for it?
yeah. Hold on. Randy's. Um, so I was gonna say, I'm distracted. I apologize. I apologize. I'm just like, I can't talk, and then they keep going on, and I'm like, can't talk. So, um, what was I gonna say? Well, anyhow, the primary's over, so we have the the general election coming up. And let's talk about Mamdani's wins last
Sure.
night. What do you think about those?
Well, just for our listeners, I'm sure, our most engaged and tuned in listeners know by now that three of Mayor Zoran Mamdani's endorsed picks for Congress won their primaries. And so the most high profile, I would say, is Brad Lander, former controller, former candidate for mayor himself, definitely formed a bond with Zoran Mamdani in the ranked choice phase of voting. Um, and was widely believed to maybe go into the administration with Mayor Mamdani, but saw this opportunity to run for Congress in the 10th district, which includes parts of Park Slope, Borum Hill, Cobble Hill, Lower East Side, all sorts of all parts of Brooklyn, certain parts of Brooklyn and Manhattan.
Which at one point might have been meshed
Yeah,
with our
that's
district. Yeah.
yeah, when it looked like, we might get the best birthday, Christmas, Hanukkah present ever and maybe get to redistrict. But that was sort of like, I think of that moment in Mean Girls when Lindsay Lohan breaks the breaks the crown and Damien's like, "Ugh." That was like me when the Supreme Court ruled. I was like,
I'm so sorry. Well, Brad Lander won, and he defeated Dan Goldman, who was the incumbent and was doing a good job.
He
So,
was, and they've both been on our podcast, both
yes,
of
they
them.
have. They've both
Yeah.
been on our podcast. Proud to say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I really like Dan Goldman a lot, but I honestly, if I was in that district, I would have voted for Brad. Um, and simply on the fact of the message. I like Dan, but he was a little too corporate for me, and that was my issue. And then also his, stance with Israel, and I think that's well, overall, I think that sent a message to the nation that there are a lot of Democrats who don't like our position on Israel. And I don't see it as an anti-Semitic thing. I think a lot of people here, a lot of Democrats, I think, believe in Israel's right to exist, but I don't think they approved of how they handled Gaza, and that they don't have a blank check to just kind of, establish this one state. There
Well,
has
they
to be
won.
something with Palestinians.
Yeah, they won. I definitely think, Israel's interests are not aligned with ours in many different ways, certainly as far as the humanitarian crisis in Gaza that they've caused, um, and the certainly just the fact that they've, dog walked Donald Trump into this disastrous war with Iran.
Hmm.
And, our interests seem to be diverging at this point because Trump is just looking for an easy way out, whereas Bibi and Israel are like, no, keep going, keep at it. And there's been a sharp, fissure in that way over the last week or so. And I think that was really the issue that took hold in Congressional District 10. And that's really what led to, I think, Dan Goldman, being defeated. Because if you look at their debates, they had two debates. And there were, on the other issues, there wasn't really all that much daylight between them.
No, I mean, they both did very well. They both were very active with the ICE issue.
Yeah,
In fact, Brad actually publicly and during his thank you speech, the good work that Dan Goldman did with ICE, and that they were going to continue. He had some sort of triage thing
yeah.
set up, and that he did do a lot of good work with them. Um,
Well, I
I,
hope
I
Dan
like Dan
Goldman.
Goldman, but look, he'll be fine. He's a lawyer.
Oh,
I know
he's
he
from
lost
and
his job.
he's from well, but he's from a bazillionaire family, so he'll be all right.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
And so but I also think, this goes back a little bit, to the interim period between Biden and then, when we got Trump back. But Dan Goldman initially was looking to run because when Tish James, for 5 minutes decided to run for governor, he was one of the candidates to succeed her as Attorney General. That's the original office he was running for. And then,
Mhm.
what we've seen over the last few cycles, redistricting fuckery happened, and he decided to run for the district that he's currently representing. And then when Tish James decided just to run for Attorney General, he decided to run for the House seat. And so I'm hopeful that, we see him in some capacity here and there.
I
And
hope he continues helping
yeah,
people with ICE because he was great on that aspect. So I really hope he does. He's a good public servant. This is a primary. These things happen. Um,
yeah,
and unfortunately, he was a good congressman, but in this race, this is the sign of the times in the district that he's in. Israel is an important part, and he didn't
he
play
was
the
on the wrong, he was on the wrong
good
side
all
of
the
it.
time.
And, I think that I spoke to somebody in the district last year, and when they were contemplating who they wanted to run against Stan Goldman, and I said, well, you're you're talking to somebody where the bar is really low because Nicole Malliotakis is my congresswoman.
Yeah,
I said imperfect Dan Goldman would be just fine with me. And
yeah.
and so I would be okay with that. And so, but I understand, that they had other issues, and I understand that they, took really strong objection to his stance on Israel, and AIPAC was really what did it for him, because he was receiving a whole lot of money from the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee for his campaigns, and that really was something that I think a lot of Brad Landers voters were animated by and wanted to
And
see change.
that for in some congressional districts is the kiss of death. You get money from AIPAC.
All
Um,
of them, it's becoming that way now. AIPAC has become, their brand is just totally toxic now.
yeah. So, in that aspect, Claire Valdez defeated Antonio Renisso,
Yeah,
seventh district. And this was Nydia Velasquez's district, right? So,
Sunset Park, Parks
and
and Themes, yeah.
Nydia, I remember, I met her. I did meet her. I remember when she first became a congresswoman, I think. This was during the CUNY takeovers and the tuition hike stuff. She met up with us when she first became in elected office. But she was voting for Antonio, and
Yeah.
um, and then Madame supported Claire Valdez. So once again, an establishment endorsement got kicked to the curb,
Well,
despite
I
her
don't, yeah,
years. Like she was a beloved congresswoman. She just
yeah.
stepped down, like, retiring. So,
Well, I wouldn't call Antonio Reynoso, who's the current Brooklyn borough president, I wouldn't call him establishment. Again, there wasn't really all that much
well,
daylight.
Nydia, I mean,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
was, the
Because
established.
yeah, because I watched a little bit of their debate too a few weeks ago, and again, there didn't seem to be all that many differences between the two of them. And there was another candidate as well. It was between three candidates in that race. And she's an assemblywoman, I believe, Claire Valdez. Um, I think that's the office she's currently occupying.
Hmm. So,
And she
and then
doesn't she doesn't have the kind of, record that we could look at, somebody like a Brad Lander, for example.
right. Well, supported by Mamdani. And then the third candidate, which I think had the most controversial, was Daraliza Villa Chevalier, if I'm saying that,
Hmm.
Chevalier. And she defeated the incumbent Adriano Esfialt, who was like old. He had like the whole Latino uh, North Bronx, Harlem, like
Yeah,
behind him. So
that's a
that was
machine
establishment. Yeah.
that's a machine within the machine, really.
Machine, yeah. That was
That's a machine within the machine. And so um I think she's the most controversial by
well, they're
far
going to
of the
use
three.
her. She's going to be the poster child for the Republicans who are going to use her and say, "Look at this woman. Do you support this woman?" Which I really hope Democrats play this well and as opposed to allowing Republicans to use that, um, you know, I think we all have as political people, like if I was to ever run for Congress, and people went and looked at my, my past, or, your politics, they they grow, they change. Um and so I'm really, she has said some controversial things in the past. But we'll see how she works in Congress. Like, I'm going to kind of see how she won, and let's see how she does.
Yeah, well, I just kind of want to give some context to the things that she's tweeting about, because when we say, oh, it's controversial tweets, that could be anything. And so she has tweeted in the not so distant past, by the way. It's not like it was 15 years ago. It was, 2 or 3 years ago. She tweeted about prison abolition. She tweeted about abolishing police and open borders. Um, she said, this tweet I have right in front of me, this was during the 2024 election. I have no nuance to add. Fuck Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I heard
Um,
that. She said that.
yeah. And then for about Joe Biden, I'm never going to give my vote to a rapist. I don't
Yeah.
I don't understand because, he did have an accusation a long time ago, but it was disproven. Um, and and she's also spoken in favor of Russia, which the Republicans will probably like. But she said, because the Cold War ended and we've been bullying Russia ever since. Also, war is lucrative for these sociopaths. This was about Ukraine. Um, and so I'm just worried about that being hung on every Democrat's neck, all of these things. And so she's since, apologized for a lot of these things. She has since talked about it, and she's since discussed, that she's evolved on certain things. And to me, whether it's
Maybe she has.
maybe
So
it's maybe it's
But
sincerely
why
held.
why are we as Democrats going to hang her as well? Why can't we give her a clean slate? She won. Let's see what she does. As
Well,
opposed to allowing the Republicans to use this. We should not be going, well, yeah, they were bad and it wasn't that long ago. She won. Let's see. She might be a great congresswoman. Let's see what
perhaps, but I also
she's
think,
apologized, and she's said,
yeah,
things
well,
have changed. Let's see if it has.
the apology to me tells me that she acknowledges that it's not good, that these things are not good. And so,
Exactly.
it's an acknowledgement that these things are not good. And hopefully, I'm when people I'm not when people say, and these are all not Brad Lander so much, but the other two are DSA picks, Democratic Socialists of America.
Yeah.
Um, and when it comes to the Democratic Socialists of America, I've spoken to some DSA members, and I said, you can get me with the 32-hour work week, which is part of their platform. I love that 32-hour work week. But you lose a lot of people when it comes to prison abolition and uh, abolishing police, which is what she's spoken about.
Yeah, but
You lose
how
people.
many I don't know. I've heard a lot of DSA people speak. I don't hear prison abolition and abolish the police. So
That's part of
this
their
is
written
something that,
platform.
well, how often do you hear that? Does Mondami talk about that?
No, but it's part of their written
Oh,
platform. It is. And so I think whenever you identify yourself that way, I'm a this or a that, people will hold you to everything that they claim to stand for, whether you want them to or not. And so I think that has to be addressed. And, you know, I have some concerns about those things, number one, because they're all bad policies, a lot of those things. But I would also say that politically, we ought to be concerned because um, we have a situation where Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris only won New York State by 13 points when the Democrats should have ran away with that. Kathy Hochul barely got reelected in 2022, maybe 5%, maybe 5 or 6% of the vote.
Oh,
Uh,
here we
Donald
go.
Trump,
Here's their
well,
platform.
I'm just saying this.
Medicare for all, housing for all, college for all, a stronger labor movement, a 32-hour work week, taxing the wealthy and large corporations, a Green New Deal. Sounds very AOC. Criminal justice reform and reducing mass incarceration. Ending the war on drugs, campaign finance reform to reduce the influence of money in politics. That's their top things on their platform. We as Democrats are going to go through the cracks of this party and bite ourselves in the ass. These the DSA is a part of the Democratic umbrella, and they're the progressives. I don't expect you to agree with everything that they stand for, but don't demonize these candidates. They won the Democratic primary. They're Democrats. And there's quite a few people now that are elected from this club. So, um, how are we going to not allow Republicans to turn this into something negative? That's what we should be focusing on
Well,
because
I think
they're
we,
good candidates. They
like,
won. Their people voted for them.
well, I think
So,
there's two folds. One, we don't let them do it, but also I'm thinking back to 2018, very similar moment. Donald Trump was president. The IDC, which was the more moderate coalition with the Republicans in the New York State Senate, they all received left-leaning challengers. Many of them got knocked out in those challenges. However, they all, when they actually took office and they assumed office in 2019, they passed through some policies that made the Democrats in New York unpopular, like the ill-conceived bail reform, like reforms to discovery, which made it easier for criminals to escape, like giving squatters legal rights, like doing all of these things that made people start to question Democrats. And again, we saw that uh, in 2020, Donald Trump performed his much improved his 2016 performance in New York in 2020. 22, Kathy Hochul barely gets reelected with 5% of the vote. Kamala Harris in 2024 gets 13% in New York. A Democrat should run away with New York. And the thing that people cited most frequently was a disconnect between not just the economics of living in a blue state and a blue city, but a blue state and a blue city's inability to deal with criminal justice and public safety. And so those are real concerns that we have to address. And I think if
well,
people, I
address them
think,
as Democrats and fight it out within the party, but don't demonize the DSA over it.
oh,
And
I'm not
and
demonizing. I'm just saying
I fault
these policies.
Democrats as a whole in the state government that nobody people are like, oh, it was a bad policy. It was a bad policy. It was, but it was correcting something that was actually wrong.
It was
In
an
regard
overcorrection. It was an
it was an
overcorrection.
overcorrection, and we tend to do that a lot. You ever notice, like, at school when, a parent calls and complains and how we react and we overreact, and then, we make the problem worse. Um, but that's an issue with like not good politicians in office. So, um, regardless of whether they're
They were
progressive or from
It
the
was well,
center.
it was the more progressives, particularly the ones that took out the IDC members who were pushing those policies at the time. And so we have to watch that because whenever a group or a coalition like this gets into power, very oftentimes they overplay their hand and it bites us in the ass. And so uh, we have to really try to rein in a lot of the excesses of these policies. I'm all for a 32-hour work week. I am all for taxing the rich more, which is part of their
I'm
platform.
all for Medicare for all.
I'm not, but
Oh
I
yeah.
just I'm not either, but I am also for
I'm
more
for taxing
access.
the rich. I'm for campaign finance.
Same,
Campaign finance, definitely. I mean,
same,
I
same.
the just in regards to look at how this primary is in regards to who gets money and who doesn't. The Green New Deal, I'm a Green New Deal person. And a stronger labor movement. And what's interesting is a lot of labor leaders tend to like not favor a more progressive, who are more pro-labor than a lot of, a lot of these more conservative Democrats. Um, and I find that funny, you know, but where the labor leadership really is. But uh, there's a lot of good things that, you know, the progressives fight for, and there's a few of them that aren't people don't like, which is fine. This is why a lot of everybody, if everybody liked it, everybody would be in, the Democratic Socialists of America. But they're not, it's not everything I favor as well. But
Well, it's not, and also they're probably there. You speak a lot on this show about property owners and how we should have some kind of
but nobody talks
incentive.
about it. I find
No,
like I'm the only one who ever talks about it.
well, the
So,
DSA is very hostile to property owners for
well,
the
then
most
nobody
part.
talks. I would still so doesn't mean I'm gonna not, I would still confront it at a meeting. You
Yeah.
know, there are a lot of people out there who are property owners, and they're working class property owners, and so it's like, when a parent yells, we all shut down and go, oh, you know, and then people get offended. It's like you speak up. Um, you speak up and you battle it out, but there's still, you know, if we're the party for the working class, I'm sorry, homeowners are a part of the working class.
Oh, they
They
are.
are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
And
I'm actually for the things, and I think I said this last week, but I'm actually for the stuff that Mamdani wants to do with abusive landlords. If you're a property owner and forcing people to live in squalor and disrepair, then you should pay some consequence for that.
absolutely. I lived in an apartment building before I owned a house where we had so many fines on our landlord, so many fines. And he used them as like, like starting his fire, like his fireplace in his house. Ironically, we had a fire in that house. I wasn't living there at the time. I had moved out by then, but the man did nothing. They never paid their heating bill. We didn't have heat. Stuff went down the line, and he got violation after violation after violation, and nothing happened to that landlord, and they still own that house. That house should have been confiscated. So Mondami will do good on that aspect. But,
And I saw
uh,
somebody at the party last night and we were following these different races, and what she was saying was interesting. She said, Mamdani can't run for president because he's just constitutionally ineligible. He wasn't born in the United States, but
right.
he is going to cement his political imprint on the national discourse in this way.
Good.
And and what I
No,
think, yeah, and what I think is interesting is that, there's been a lot of talk today about, will this work in other places? And I'm still skeptical that it'll work in certain places. So, for example, in the beginning of the year, and I think Mamdani knows that. I think Mamdani is shrewd enough and calculated enough to know where it's going to work and where it's not. And
look, when
so,
you're an activist is different than a politician. It's totally two different things. I consider myself an activist because if I otherwise I'd be running for a political office. And when you run for a political office and you win, you have to compromise with other people. It's just politics. You have to play certain games. When you're an activist, you yell and scream and you shout about what pisses you off and what you feel is just or not.
oh
Um,
yeah, well, I
and
just want
Mondami was an activist, and now
yeah.
he's a politician, and he's got to play, and we'll see how he plays. And so
Well,
far, it looks like he's doing well.
yeah, well,
Candidates won.
yeah, because a lot of people I know in the beginning of the year, like around January when he first, or maybe it was in December moving into January when he was going through the transition of coming into office. Um, the interesting thing is that there was a credible challenger to Hakeem Jeffries, who is likely to be the next Speaker of the House if the Democrats retake the House of Representatives next year. And Che who is a council member within Jeffries' district, he was widely seen as the DSA's choice to primary Jeffries. But it was actually interesting. Mamdani was a very active part of killing that. and basically saying, don't do it. And I think part of it is number one, it's not a good look. This is what I've heard people say
Yeah.
who are close to it, but they've said it wasn't a good look, to try and take out potentially the first black Speaker of the House, number one. Number two, his district, meaning Hakeem Jeffries' congressional district, it wouldn't be receptive to that kind of a democratic movement. And for our listeners, we're not watching, maybe we're just listening on audio. I'm doing a C shape, a reverse C shape here. And that's the way I remember it. Because you have Bed-Stuy, Canarsie, East New York, then you go down to the southeast Brooklyn.
Madison, where
Yeah.
Madison is, and Marine
Sheepshead
Park, and
Bay.
yeah,
Yeah. You have all of those places. Actually, his district overlaps with Jessica's.
Midwood.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
overlaps with Jessica's Senate district, Coney Island,
Hmm.
also. So they wouldn't necessarily be receptive to that. And if you look at the results from the mayoral election, it's went very heavily for Andrew Cuomo in those places. And so that's one. And actually, there was another primary last night, although Mamdani didn't make an endorsement. The challenger here in this one, I forget which number district it was, but got
13. I had
it.
it up here. Hold on.
It was the Grace Meng primary. Chuck Park was her
Oh,
challenger.
yes. Okay, that
Yeah.
was in Queens.
Yeah, Chuck Park was her challenger, and he actually was doing. I followed him on Instagram, and he was, it seemed like he was kind of this young upstart, but Mamdani didn't endorse there, and I guess because Mamdani knows and is skilled enough and shrewd enough to know where his endorsement will do the most good to a candidate, and where it'll do the most harm. And
Also, this is he's a new mayor. He put three in the hat and he wanted to see how he did. And
yeah,
um, I heard him say that someone said, think you're a little too soon using your political capital. And he's like, the one thing about, when you have capital is you should spend it. And
hmm
so I think he spent wisely. I think, like you said, he played where he thought it would benefit. And, even with the not Mike, Daria Lisa,
hmm
going against the incumbent,
Adriana
Adriano.
Espan, yeah.
As- I thought that was a little challenging, but so, but he did
That's
play
a
it.
machine. Yeah, that's a machine in and of itself. That Harlem machine. That's really going back to Charlie Rangel. That's a really big machine within the party.
And this is where I think this is a sign of the times. I think there is an underbelly of people who are kind of tired of establishment Democrats. And maybe not every place around New York City, but and there's certain underbelly where it's like I'm tired of this. I want to see change. And that's what happened.
Yeah, and like we said, Grace Meng, I don't know what the final tally was for her, but she won convincingly. And then, another big congressional primary was CD12.
Michael Lasha, yeah.
Yeah, CD12, and that had a million candidates in it. And
Right. My
Schlossberg,
Schlossberg, I love him. I I know he wasn't going to win, but he's kind of like a refreshing breath of fresh air. But he's hopefully down the road he'll try something again.
yeah. Well, and I
As a
think
Kennedyite, I'm a Kennedyite. I hope
I,
that we see one in
I'm
again.
not a big Kennedy person. But I think he was actually a leading candidate in that race for a time, and then there was a New York Times piece that came out which really was scathing. I mean, it would just painted him as a nepo baby. I can attach it to the show notes, and I think I
Yeah,
did. I think I did maybe to a previous episode, but it painted him as the spoiled nepo baby who never really held a job for any length of time. And then, the campaign itself, his campaign itself was chaotic. There were people moving in and out. Um, there was one instance that comes to mind where he wanted to fire somebody and didn't tell them, so they stuck around 2 more weeks after he wanted them gone. And so it was, it struck me as like, kid stuff because he's young. And so maybe if he gets his shit together in the next few years, he could make a move and do something different. But
Yeah.
Michael, yeah, Michael,
I
I
hope
still want,
he comes back at some point. I liked
yeah,
him. He didn't run a good campaign, and maybe because that shows maybe he's new. This is new at this game, so we will see. But
yeah. Michael Asher won that primary, and interestingly enough, again,
he
you know,
defeated Boris. I saw a lot of ads for that. Him
yeah, and
whole AI thing.
yes, because Boris had, um, in fairness, he had worked for Palantir,
Yeah.
which is a surveillance technology company that, has been very close to the Trump administration. A lot of people believe that ICE uses it to track people down through facial recognition software and
Yeah,
other
I
features that
owned
it has.
Palantir stock. I saw him on Bill Maher a few years ago, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds interesting." And I bought some shares, and then when I found out what they did, I sold it. So,
Yeah, and so I think that played a part in him being defeated. But Michael Lasher, we talk about money in politics, who he eventually won. Mike Bloomberg gave a ton of money to Michael
Kathy
Lasher.
Hochul was behind him too. So,
Yes, and he was also, and I said
so
this a
that's a
few,
win for her.
yeah, it's a few weeks. I said this a few weeks ago, but in Manhattan, um, they really value like the local people that they see out there. So Michael Asher was actually the chief of staff to Jerry Nadler, who's the one retiring from this seat. And so they kind of know him. There's some exposure there. There's some relationship to this person. And so they tend to really value that. And
Yeah.
I know my friend Eric Botcher is happy now in the state senate. That was the race he decided to run, but he was also a candidate early on and decided to run for state senate instead. That's who initially I was supporting for that race, and um, so that was an interesting primary. And again, Mamdani is very skilled with his endorsement because I think he knows in that neighborhood, which there's probably some skepticism of him there because it's a very heavily Jewish neighborhood that he knew if he endorsed publicly there, it would probably hurt the candidate. And so, again, very shrewd, very nimble, very skilled about how his endorsement um, plays out in these varying races. And so, that was interesting. And there were a couple of other, none that come to the top of mind for me, but there were a couple of really
Oh,
interesting.
Jessica Ramos lost her
That,
seat.
yes, that was an interesting one. That
So
was, yeah.
her Cuomo dividend is not paying off at all.
I don't, I said this at the time. She's been on this podcast too when she was running
Mhm.
for mayor, but I don't quite understand what was behind that. What did she think was going to get out of it? And usually in a ranked choice setting, you endorse like what Mamdani and Lander did. They endorsed each other and it was kind of a slate sort of a deal.
Yeah,
She endorsed him, he didn't endorse her back,
right.
which is typical
She
Cuomo
played the wrong
scumbag.
card.
Yeah,
Yeah,
scumbag
yeah,
shit, And an assemblywoman, I think, beat her in that
yeah.
seat. Yeah.
So that was a big loss. And then Mike Blake didn't win. Um, he ran in the Bronx, who ran for mayor. But I like Mike Blake, and I hopefully he will find a footing somewhere in politics here in New York City. So good luck to him.
I think, well, with that race, I think because his main opponent was Congressman Richie Torres,
Yeah, he was.
who's a big Israel supporter. And uh, I think in order to do maybe what, Lander did to Goldman, you have to just consolidate around one person and not splice up the anti-Torres vote. You have to just consolidate around Michael Blake or whoever to be the anti-Richie Torres, and that's how you defeat somebody like that.
Also, the Israel issue is probably not as big a deal in that district as maybe where,
Yeah,
you know, um, because I think where where uh Brad Lander won, it was like Park Slope. That's like, the liberal capital of the world
yeah,
is that area over there. So, yeah, I just think like, New York City is is as diverse, as its districts are as diverse as its people. Like things that are, important in the Bronx are not important on Staten Island or in Brooklyn, in different districts. Um, so he did not win against Richie Torres. So we will, you know, so so that was our primary elections. Now we go on to the general, and I think the big goal here is to flip the Congress, because we have to give Trump some more trouble. I mean, we finally came to, I mean, things just don't get done anymore.
No.
Um, but the Congress finally came together and passed a bill on housing, and the president was going to sign it, and he actually had it all set up, and last minute said, "Nope, I'm not going to do it." And
Well, he said, nope, not going to do it. And this was when we say bipartisan, overwhelming majority in the House. I think it was something like 350 something to maybe 60 something. And then in the Senate, it was nearly unanimous.
yeah, it was like 85 or something like
Yeah.
that.
And so this is, a rare thing to see something where members of both parties and both houses of Congress really consolidate around and build consensus with. And just to be clear about what this housing bill does, it was in part inspired by it was the vote in the House was 358 to 330 to 32, and then 85 to 5 in the Senate.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and this is what it would do. It was inspired in part. I spoke about it last year a lot. The Ezra Klein book, Abundance, and uh, it speeds up the process of building housing. So makes environmental studies and permitting reviews go much quicker than they otherwise ordinarily would be. Um, Cuts through certain regulations to make the process go faster. You were talking about this part of it before, Nancy. So limits on large institutional investors acquiring single-family homes, an effort intended to make more homes available for individual buyers rather than corporate landlords. Um, Supporting manufacturing and modular housing removes or modernizes federal rules that critics said unnecessarily increase the cost of manufactured housing, encourages wider use of modular construction to expand affordable housing, and it helps first time and lower income home buyers for small dollar mortgages and makes modernized federal home ownership programs more accessible to more people. And there's more things here like that, but that's the gist of it basically, is it makes things faster and more accessible as far as building houses. And Donald Trump is holding that ransom because
Mhm.
he wants to push through his voter suppression law called the Save America Act. And he's basically saying, you will not get housing unless I get to take away your right to vote.
Right. And our congresswoman supports that act. She's been pushing. She thinks it's very important we get that act passed as well. So we should remind her that it's voter suppression, not
Well,
voter security.
Well, she's full of shit and she
Yeah.
knows it. And I think, she complains about, voter ID and security and this and that. And yet here she was a few months ago trying to take her only opponent off the ballot with her lawyers, her first votes in Congress, which decertify a free and fair election in two states, uh, potentially throwing out millions of votes in a free and fair election. And then when there's a threat that she might be redistricted, then she cries about democracy. She only loves democracy when it works for her and when it
Yeah.
works for her party and when it works for Donald Trump. She
And she's got
doesn't,
something to say.
yeah. Then and she doesn't like it when the federal government maybe tries to intervene to protect people's voting rights and civil rights. Then she has a problem with that. But she,
Right.
you know, but she's certainly okay with it when she's trying to suppress people's votes.
Yeah, this is going to knock a lot of people off. And it's not popular. A lot of people do not want, and Republicans as well. Like,
Lisa
um,
Murkowski talked about on the Senate floor just what it would take for people in her state to get an ID that would be acceptable under the SAVE Act to vote. And because an ordinary driver's license for our listeners would not be acceptable under this law. You would have to get a passport, which is upwards of $200. In the case of Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, she put up a map on the Senate floor which showed the distance that people in her state would have to travel to get that, and the expenses that would incur for them to travel to get that. And so she essentially
A lot
equated
of
it
people,
to, yeah, she
they won't
essentially,
vote.
yeah, she essentially equated that to a poll tax, and the effort and the money involved, as you said, would discourage people from even going through the process. And actually, the first time it came up, it did come up before in the Senate, and a few Republicans voted to kill it with the Democrats. And the few Republicans were Susan Collins, because of course, she's up for re-election, so she decides that she has moral courage now, and when she's not being gravely concerned for the 50th
Yeah,
time. Murkowski voted against it. Mitch McConnell voted against it. Um, and I believe there was one more Republican, Tom Tillis. He voted against it from North Carolina. And
really.
yeah, and so they voted to kill the SAVE Act a few weeks ago. And it's not going to happen. I think Trump will eventually have to capitulate and sign this housing bill. And I think the way he would do that is if there's something that really bad comes out in the headlines. Maybe there's something more damning about his ties to Epstein, or there's something, or just the Iran war is being fucked more than it is right now, or there's more algae in the reflecting pool.
Oh
Uh,
my God, the algae that I was listening to um the the pundit, the Republican pundit, like talk about how like there's like this like algae conspiracy, like people are deliberately like destroying the pond, like they're going in and deliberately like
And
no,
then
it's
Santa comes by and takes them away on his magic sleigh with all the reindeer.
yeah.
And it's, please. And but in any case, he'll use this housing bill to distract from something that's embarrassing. So I think that's the scenario in which he caves, because the SAVE Act is not going to pass. It does not have the votes. It does not have the 60 votes to pass. It will
Well,
not pass.
I'm glad it doesn't because
Yeah.
it's a horrible act, and it keeps talking about like this election in LA, like oh, it took 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden they have the votes, and I don't know why I listen to him sometimes. I'm so confused after I listen to the president. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, that's if he can even stay awake for 5 minutes. And so there's that. But also, anytime I see somebody saying the Democrats rigged the LA mayoral election, if number one, you have zero knowledge of politics, because if you think Karen Bass would not rather be facing Spencer Pratt over a left-leaning challenger, then
Yeah.
you're crazy. She would much rather be up against Spencer Pratt.
Well, but when you listen to him, he just spews out like these ridiculous stories. Like he makes it up as he's going along. Like I honestly think he does. He makes it up, and then everybody goes, "Oh, he said that. Okay, so let me repeat it on Fox," or and then it becomes this true story, and it's scary.
Well,
Because
Judge Boxawine was on Fox News talking about how she was going to prosecute these reflecting pool vandals. And if she wants to know who the reflecting pool vandal is, just walk into the Oval Office, because that's who it is. The best thing he could have done about
yeah,
this is nothing.
he hired a contractor that was a friend of his,
In,
and
no-
he
in a
fucked
no
it
bid
up.
in a no bid contract, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh, but that's okay. A no bid contract is okay. Like, that's fine.
And the reason, for our listeners, the reason we have, a process around who gets to do these sort of projects is because the federal government has an interest in getting the best price and getting the best people to do the job. This guy that he hired to do the reflecting pool, he looks like, for wrestling fans who were younger like me, he looks like the Undertaker's manager, Paul Bearer. Like, and they were calling him Pool Bearer online. Like, if you like go afterwards, like go Google Paul Bearer, The Undertaker, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Well, well, this is, Poolgate.
Yeah.
These are the problems. And Trump won't sign the bill. Iran's not working out. The Save Act's not working out. His reflection pool. The 4th of July, our 250th anniversary is coming up soon. What has this administration, what are they doing to
Well,
plan for this day? Like, I don't really hear anything like that's gonna go on that's exciting
they're
about
throwing
200,
they're throwing a
right?
white trash debutante ball. That's what they're doing.
But really, like, what are they doing to celebrate 250? Like, remember we had the talk, no, you weren't even born for the 200th. No,
No.
no. Oh, well, back in the day, I remember like the tall ships like came into the harbor and, it was like, I remember 200. It was when we were allowed to have fireworks.
Well, the best thing I think um, that we could do on the 4th of July is not let MAGA co-opt it, not let and not let Trump make it all about him, even though he wants to. And
Well,
he's had no choice because all of any credible music act, even Milli Vanilli, dropped out of his performance. And it must
what
have
if that would like, and you look at all of the people that showed up for Obama's
Yeah, I was
opening.
just gonna say, yeah, that must have killed him. Christina Aguilera, John Legend, just all of these, phenomenally ta talented superstars showing up for Obama, and the best he could do is Vanilla Ice.
Oh well, I don't know. Have you heard anything that's going on for 250? Anything?
Well, I expect there to be probably a pretty robust celebration here in New York, like the firecrackers along the harbor and stuff like
We
that.
have that every year. We have the
Yeah,
Macy's
yeah.
celebration.
Yeah, I expect it this year to be, significantly more bigger. But as far as, it's basically become the plans involving Washington, D.C. and the president have basically become a Trump rally.
Yeah, that's what he's doing, right? He's having pretty much a Trump rally.
Yeah,
I saw some things on social media. There's a young kid going around about Staten Island and like colonial history. It's kind of neat that, like they're doing some kind of social media stuff about the different points around Staten Island because we played a big role in the American Revolution. So,
we did.
um, so kudos to that kid.
I remind my students all the time, and not surprisingly, Staten Island was a very loyalist place to the British, which I always say we've always been behind the curve.
We've always been we
We've always lagged
we
behind.
go to the different beat. Did I tell you I found my father's papers from the secession movement?
Was this a while back when you kind of discovered his side of the family, or was
No,
this later?
this was later. I found like I remember he was a member of the secession, like he was pretty pro like seceding, but I found recently like a whole bunch of letters he wrote to like different elected officials. He was in it. It was in the 90s. It was earlier than I thought it was. Because I we're having that movement again a little bit. So but yeah, he was a secessionist. Um but so we've all been like this Ten Island's always been a bunch of rebels and going
Yeah,
the other way and things like that. Um,
rebel for all the wrong causes.
but yeah, but there's a lot of cool stuff here. Like, the failed peace treaty was on actually September 11th, 1776. Interesting day,
Yeah,
down at the conference house. Um, that happened here. You know, General Howe, like up in New Dorp Lane, there was like a tavern that they staged a lot of the stuff from. Of course, there's Richmond Town, um, but there's a lot of, I'm sure that Richmond Town will do something for 250.
oh
Um,
yeah.
I have a dog, so I'm always worried about fireworks, so I don't like to go too far. And I have a new dog, so I don't know how this dog's going to react to fireworks. So
He
hopefully,
doesn't, well, I'm sure there are comparable noises like in your neighborhood. What does he do to that?
nothing yet. So, but sometimes they light fireworks right behind my house. They're pretty loud. That hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
So we will see. Um, but on that note, just to end, because politics are always doom scroom. Um, it's nice to see that the World Cup is still keeping up with, kudos to the American people. I think they're really showing. I've been reading a lot about people who are coming to the U.S. and they're very pleased that not so much like they always hear bad things about the government, but they're very pleased at the way Americans are. They're feeling very welcome. They're having a lot of fun. I think a
Well,
lot of they're calling it like the world's big slumber party. That's what they're calling this. And also, I think it's good for Americans because they're coming and they're seeing people from all around the world, um, you know,
well,
and their
hopefully those,
cultures and things like that. So
yeah, hopefully those people are like, what the fuck are you people doing? You're like,
there's a run on ranch dressing. So
I heard that. I heard
they're
there's a
making
big,
TSA approved size ranch thing.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that there was a big, that's what they're taking to, is
Yeah. But
range dressing.
there was a guy from I think he was from Australia and he was talking about a Popeyes chicken. And God, it made me want to go to Popeyes. Like they were just like, oh my God. And they had this spicy, I'm talking like a Southerner. And they had a coleslaw. It must have had a mustard in it. It was just like, it was delicious. And it was all for $6. And then I'm going, $6? I go, that man was not in New York. I go, he must have went to a Popeyes in the South because
Here it would be much more
like
expensive.
$15. So
Yeah.
but I'm glad some people are getting to afford um going. I feel bad for Scotland. I hope they hopefully they get the third. They were so much fun, the Scottish. They were down up in Boston, now they're down in Miami. They lost today, but they might get a third place thing. So you know, someone who watches football on occasion, I'm enjoying the World Cup and I'm enjoying how the world is coming together and it's I, we do we do good things when we come together. So when I get all frustrated with Donald Trump and crap like that, and I think about the World Cup, and
Yeah. Well, if he went, he would probably fall asleep again. I
he
mean,
he said he's going to go to the final match.
whoever everybody's rooting for is going to lose. Because he just sort of, kills the vibe wherever he goes.
Yeah. So, but the president of Mexico, she's at like all events, and I think
Well,
she
I
gave
know,
up
but
her seat and gave
she's
it to
not,
like a regular person.
well, she's not, the living embodiment of all seven deadly sins and just overall, just a really
Yeah.
an unpleasant person to watch and listen to and be around because he smells about evidently. So,
Well, for those, I don't know how many of um our MAGA, our trolls. Remember, Trump did not sign this um, housing bill. And another thing he has not done for the country. So, Democrats, let's go, let's come together and let's flip these seats and let's make Congress uh, a majority and do some real work. And people are hurting. So,
yeah, and a little accountability wouldn't hurt for these guys either.
absolutely. So,
So,
all
well, on
right.
that note, this is the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. I'm Andrew Savage.
And I'm Nancy Richards. See you next time.
Next week.